To be a hippie, that's a tough one because it's your generation that's calling my generation hippies. We didn't consider ourselves hippies. We were just doing what needed to be done. I think looking back, I guess you guys associate it with the tie-dye and the long dresses and ironing your hair and flowers and all this peace stuff, but we didn't look at it that way. We were just doing what we needed to do to get rid of a terrible war, Vietnam, and to let people know who we were.
You were really a free thinker who not only thought more freely, but you led your life more freely. Totally different from the norm at the time.
For some it meant giving up all of the parts of establishment and really going off the deep edge, living in condos, doing nothing but drugs and spending several years in a drug-induced haze. But for a lot of us it was more of a protest against what we saw as the restrictions of society, the injustices of the world.
A hippie was somebody that was a revolutionary at the time. Hippies were against the war. Hippies were against the Vietnam War. Hippies were kind of like standalone. They were very independent thinkers and were very much out of the mainstream.
It all started back with not the hippie movement, but back in the 50s, the beatnik generation. They were the first that really got it all started. And then the hippies kind of like latched on to that idea of dropping out and took it out of just a small locale in New York City and developed it for.
I just told my class as I walked out that I'm probably one of the few people of my generation who admits that I did not go to Woodstock. If everybody who claims to have gone to Woodstock went, the entire state of New York would have sunk under the weight of all those bodies. I was home from summer vacation during Woodstock, working so I could go back for another semester of college. And I remember thinking, boy, that sounded like fun, until I saw the pictures of the rain and the mud. And I'm not a camper. I mean, sleeping in mud and going to the bathroom behind bushes just wouldn't have worked.
I had an opportunity to go to Woodstock, didn't actually go, but the music of the time was reflected in the movement against the war, and there was a lot of groups that are even being heard today, like Jimi Hendrix, Country Joe and the Fish. A lot of the groups that had their day in the 60s and 70s are now coming back and are being listened to by, your generation.
Being a very poor, struggling college student, I barely had enough to pay my tuition and books, so it was something I could not afford to do. But of course we were all impacted by what took place there, the protests, the music, and it became a big part of our lives.
I had tickets for Woodstock actually, but the day that we were about to leave for Woodstock, there was a family emergency in my fiance's family, and we never ended up going. I still have the tickets. Anybody want to buy them? I put them on eBay, and when I get enough money, they're yours.
There's something happening here. What it is.
At that time, there was something called the draft, and every young man at the age of 18 was required to sign up for the draft. And during my college years, the draft also had a lottery. Every January 1st, 365 dates were put in a big barrel and pulled out one at a time. They determined whether a young man would be drafted that year or not. The first 150 dates, if it was your birth date, so if your birthday was May 12th, and that was the 50th date pulled out, you knew you were going to war.
It was a tough time to be going through, because if you weren't in the military, you saw a lot of your friends, relatives, and it made you feel pretty much like, you know, why not me? And I was going to college and didn't have to face the draft that way because of that. So it was a benefit for me not to have to be in the military and go over to the war, but yet I often felt that that was a void that I don't know how it would have changed my life if I would have had to experience it.
It was during the time period when my brothers, their lottery number was quite low. I have identical twin brothers, and so they both received the famous Uncle Sam Wants You, and they reported for their physicals, and our family, as well as the community, we were devastated to think that they might have to go serve in Vietnam. But lucky for them, they both had some physical problems that exempted them both from the draft. So we were happy that that did occur.
One of my most vivid memories regarding the draft, I was a music major in college before I got my English major, and I'd been in a practice room in the music building till quite late at night, probably 11, 12 o'clock. And I was walking down this long hall in one of the classroom buildings, and this guy came in at the very other end of the hall, and he started doing cartwheels. And he did cartwheels all the way down the hall, and he stopped right in front of me. And I said, "What the heck are you doing?" And he said, "I'm 354, meaning of all the 365 days in the year, his draft number was 354. He knew he would not be drafted that year. Being an hour and a half from the Canadian border, I knew guys that had a suitcase packed, and the day their draft notice came, they were gone. They were gone to Canada. It was easy. You could cross the border with nothing more than your driver's license or your college ID in those days.
All the leaves are brown.
Part of being, a hippie was the fashion statement, and I think everyone more or less, took part in that. So it was an enjoyable time period as far as style was concerned.
My husband and my first car was a Volkswagen Super Beetle, actually, in 1973. I didn't have a lava lamp, but I did have a wine bottle with a candle that burned all the way down. We had special candles that burned in different colors, so it looked like you had a lot of candles. I wore moccasins. My hair was halfway down my back. And picked up the expressions. Things were groovy, peace bro, that kind of stuff.
Quite honestly, I don't remember anybody wearing tie-dye. I think you guys invented that. It was more the long dresses, the peasant dresses, a lot of flowers for the girls, the guys, the long shirts, kind of like you guys look today. A lot of the peace stuff, a lot of signs, hell no, we won't go to the Vietnam, a lot of women's lib stuff.
We see mindless attacks on all the great institutions. Even here in the United States, great universities are being systematically destroyed.
We were all greatly affected by Kent State because it was frightening to think